Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay Just Jay, your resident troublemaker and your resident culture warrior. I hope you are all doing awesome on this Friday. It is finally Friday. Woohoo! Yes, the weekend is finally just about upon us, folks. We just got to cross the finish line and we'll be there. All right, so let's get right into it. I wanted to touch on this story because in light of all the talk with Warner Brothers and New Line announcing that they were going to be putting out more Middle Earth material, I wanted to sort of touch on this because there's been a lot of discussion about them saying, or representatives from them saying that Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings can be turned into a Star Wars like franchise. So I wanted to touch base on this. This is an article coming to us from Mind Matters. And it says, "Don't turn the Lord of the Rings into Star Wars. When you have something as good as the world of Middle Earth, it becomes ever easier to injure the original vision and trade quality for commercial success." And this is from Peter Biles. And this was from March 15th. So let's get into it. Amazon's Rings of Power, which is based on the appendices of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, was an ambitious and expensive project that arguably provided little more than a surface level and underdeveloped interpretation of Middle-earth and its characters. The show, while entertaining and with its strengths, exemplified a flaw many fans feared. Commercializing Tolkien inevitably leads to compromise. Even Peter Jackson's highly praised rendition of the fantasy epic has its critics, including Tolkien's son and heir of the family estate, Christopher. The show was visually stunning but had some storytelling issues. For one, we don't ever get a sense of Middle-earth's size. Characters pop in and out of different places as if it's a 5-minute walk. When, if you've watched the original films and have read the book, travel is an arduous and time-consuming process. Travel means a journey. In fact, I'm not sure how much of a story you have in Lord of the Rings if you take out all the walking. That's when most of the events happen. On an unexpected journey. The characters in Rings of Power, most notably Elrond, seem to be able to teleport without effort or sacrifice. In addition, the dialogue often felt forced and unconvincingly didactic. I don't actually think this is the fault of the show's writers. They only had so much source material to work with and so had to invent most of the dialogue themselves. When you don't have Tolkien's own wit and wisdom to guide you, it can be tempting to settle for deep-sounding metaphors and catchphrases that end up falling flat and out of place. In the end, the pacing, dialogue, and characterization were wanting in the Rings of Power, even though I enjoyed the show. All right, well, good for him. All right, Peter. The commercialization continues. If the Rings of Power wasn't enough to reignite the debate over canonicity in Tolkien's wonderful literature, Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema announced last month that it will be rolling out several Lord of the Rings movies in the coming years. We don't know the details, including what era of Middle-earth the films will feature, but they're coming, and right on the heels of a $1 billion Amazon production. When I first saw the headlines, my gut told me, no, we don't need another visual retelling of Lord of the Rings just 20 years after Peter Jackson's project. Those films, to me, haven't aged a day. The practical effects, casting, and soundtrack have earned an inviolable throne in modern cinema. How could it ever be supplanted or improved upon? Even Jackson's The Hobbit trilogy failed to imitate its elder brother due to the excess of CGI over practical effects and extraneous storytelling. But these movies will probably explore new horizons in Middle-earth, akin to the Rings of Power, which might mean R.I.P. to R.O.P. From your mouth to God's ears. This seems like an overarching problem in Hollywood. The industry milks every popular franchise dry. I've lost count of the number of Marvel movies out there and no longer feel any urge or desire to see them when they come out because they all feel the same to me. They run together. It's one long chaotic action scene, and with the addition of the multiverse into the equation, the world feels unmoored and without real stakes or risk. Although I love Spider-Man No Way Home, anything to bring back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Kaylina Pierce Bowen, writing for Screen Rant, compares the cinematic expansion of the Lord of the Rings franchise to Star Wars. Just when you thought they were done, a preview comes up for Andor, Mandalorian, Kenobi, etc., but Star Wars has better reason to do that. Pierce Bowen writes, because they aren't answering to a foundational Star Wars text. The canon is open ended. Making more shows and movies helps increase the fan base. There's room for expansion and gap filling, and a lot of those projects have been valuable additions to the lore and story. But Lord of the Rings is not Star Wars, and media giants shouldn't try to make it compete with the likes of Marvel and other big buck franchises. The writers will, of course, draw from material that Tolkien imagined, but if Rings of Power is any indication, that endeavor may injure the magic of the original story. When you have something as timeless and good as the world of Middle-earth, it gets easier to deviate from the original vision and trade quality for commercial success. Then it becomes a cash cow, subject to the trends that can deteriorate good storytelling, lots of action but little soul, Pierce Bowen writes. Quote, to paraphrase, Thorin Oakenshield, if Warner Brothers valued quality above hoarded gold, to paraphrase Thorin Oakenshield, if Warner Brothers, quote, valued quality above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world, unquote. But instead, they chose to oversaturate the market with something below Tolkien's standard just to cash in on his popularity. All right, so that's from Peter Biles, and I kind of agree. I got to say, I kind of agree with what he's saying here, right? And the argument that's being made, right? While the fanboy in me does want to see more Tolkien content, the fanboy in me also wants to see good content, wants to see good adaptations, faithful adaptations, canonical adaptations, adaptations that respect Tolkien and his work and don't seek to change it or quote unquote modernize it for modern audiences, right? And we all know that when these big corporations, be it Amazon or Warner Brothers, when they start to see something as a franchise that can have multiple iterations, it generally means that the very first thing that will suffer, that will be tossed to the wayside, if you will be that adherence to canonical lore, the quality, like Peter was saying in the article here. I don't want it to become another Star Wars because Star Wars has essentially been killed for me. And I've mentioned this in previous videos. I'll say it again. I used to be a hardcore Star Wars fan. I mean, hardcore Star Wars fan. I still have in my shed, in a couple of bins, I have a movie quality over 2,000 US dollars cost movie accurate Boba Fett costume, right? I'm talking like the whole armor, the whole 9 yards, right? Backpack, everything, right? Even have the helmet with the voice changer so I could sound more like the original Boba Fett from the original trilogy. The blaster, the whole 9 yards. Was a member of the 501st group. For those of you who may not know, the 501st is the group you always see they're dressed up as the stormtroopers or Darth Vader or Boba Fett or the other characters. That's usually the 501st. And they are a worldwide organization. So I was a member of the 501st organization. Hardcore Star Wars fan. And was up through the prequels, so obviously the original trilogy, and then when the prequels came out with Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, was still a hardcore Star Wars fan. And then the sequels happened after Disney purchased the rights to Star Wars, or purchased Star Wars flat out. They did the sequels, and we all know how those played out, and it utterly killed it for me. I was still a fanboy when The Force Awakens first came out, but after watching it, I was like disappointed and dismayed, to say the least. And then when I saw what was going to happen with the Last Jedi, it just disgusted me. And then I did see Rogue One, which I thought was good. It was an interesting take on it. But to me, that was the last good Star Wars film, was Rogue One. Everything since then has been garbage, and to the point where I have not bothered. I watched season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, only because I really didn't have to pay for it, because at that point Disney Plus still had the 7-day free trial. So I signed up for it literally the day before the last episode of each season of The Mandalorian dropped. And then I binge watched all 8 episodes or however many it was. And then I would cancel the free trial. I'll admit it. That's exactly what I did, because I have no interest in giving Disney any of my money. And so I saw the season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. Have no interest in seeing season 3 of The Mandalorian. Have no interest in seeing the Book of Boba Fett. From what I have seen online and other content creators that I follow who have reviewed it, it's complete garbage, and they ruin the character and everything else. Same thing with Andor. Disney killed Star Wars for me. Now I literally have no interest in Star Wars. When I hear about something Star Wars related, I kind of just shrug my shoulders and walk away. I don't want that to happen to Tolkien and Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings. I don't want it to be turned into another Star Wars where they just so oversaturate the market with a new Tolkien thing that has none of the essence of what his work was and the magic contained in his work, and is just this sort of cookie cuttered money grab, cash cow thing. I don't want to see that happen. And I think most Tolkien fans are in that camp, but I could be wrong. So I do agree overall with Mr. Peter Biles when he says don't turn the Lord of the Rings into Star Wars. As much as I may want more Lord of the Rings content, I am willing to give up on that dream if it means that the limited content I can get from Middle Earth is good, Tolkien-esque, Tolkien-inspired, canonically correct, lore-adhering content. I would much rather have 1 or 2 movies like that than to have a new movie or a new series coming out every season that's complete and utter trash and on par with the Rings of Pewter. But that's just me. Anyway, I'm not going to go on and rant and rave about this. I just thought it was an interesting article. It was kind of timely in light of the conversations that have been going around in the Tolkien fandom. But let me know what you folks think down in the comment section below. Do you think that would you rather have 1 or 2 things come out from New Line, Warner Brothers, say War of the Rohirrim next year, and maybe 1 or 2 films in a couple of years that adhere to Tolkien's lore and that are good and well written and produced by people who care about doing it right? Or would you rather have some new Tolkien show or movie every year, but it be more along the lines of Rings of Pewter? Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Remember, if you like the video. If you feel like sharing the video, by all means do so. It helps us with the YouTube algorithm. It helps the channel get seen. Helps us spread the word. If you have not subscribed yet, I would hope you would consider subscribing to the channel. It does help. It will help us grow. Things are only going to heat up in the future as we get closer to season 2 of the Rings of Poo-Poo or Pewter. So yeah, and the more the merrier we have, holding the line, defending the professor and his works. And as always, if you are a subscriber, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means the world to me. And that's going to do it for this one. So go out and enjoy Friday. We're just a few hours away from the weekend, people. Enjoy it. All right, I'll see you soon. Remember, as always, to be awesome, be good, be safe, but more importantly, stay more dorkish. Until the next time, peace.